Right, so it's final countdown for the legalisation of e-scooters. Is it going to be allowed or is it not going to be allowed on the 10th of May 2022? There's big laws changing with not just e-scooters, but everything. So why are people being so negative about e-scooters? E-scooters is probably like the quadrophenia back in the 60s, a way of life, like the Who said. People are saying basically they'll only legalise them if they've got two brakes on. Well, if you look at some of the Lime scooters, they haven't got two brakes on. They've got one brake and one what you push your heel down on at the back. Yeah, it's two brakes, but you not think that's going to take you off your balance when you're riding it? On the pure second generation e-scooters, they've got a regenerating brake system on the rear. So front brakes normal, like a drum brake, and the back one is a regenerator brake. Every time the news comes on or something on the newspapers, it's always something being negative about e-scooters. I haven't seen anything positive unless it's the government mentioning these new trials. They're going well. They never say about being dumped in rivers or dumped on streets, left for anybody to fall over. The blind people, if it's being negative over these e-scooters and that for blind people, that's fine, but do you not think the trials are making this problem, not the personal private owners? Because they're not going to leave their own scooter lying on a street, are they? One thing I would say, that I do honestly think that you should wear an helmet on it. There should be like some sort of bell or some sort of chime on it so you can let people know that you're going past like a normal bike. But how many times do cyclists use their bell on the bike? Very, very rare. As you see in my previous videos when I'm walking down up and down this lane, all I got is oi, or excuse me, don't hear the bell. They're on about governing the speed or the motors on these e-scooters. There's some big people out there who want to ride these e-scooters for commuting to and from work. I think it's 500 watt. People are saying it's going to reduce it to 500 watt, 250 watt motors. There's people out there, it's basically they need that bigger wattage to pull them. But you're saying that obviously they're going to legalise and stop them going over X amount of miles. 15.5 miles an hour, I'm fine with that, but there's a lot of people who just want that little bit extra if they're commuting and they, to and from work. They want to be able to keep up with the traffic as much, but I think 20-25 miles, I think that's fine. But obviously I think then they need to look at wearing a better safety helmet than just a cycle helmet. I mean, these e-bikes, they're going over 40-50 mile an hour on these bloody e-bikes. I know they've got bigger wheels, but obviously we're not saying that we're going to be going over 50 mile an hour. Some people will, I know they will. But even if you say that 12-inch wheels, people are saying that, oh, they're going to say you need 12-inch wheels, you're going to need two brakes on. Well, like I said, the trial scooters, the Lime scooters, have only got one brake and a push down heel one at the back. Run about restrictions of the speed on the scooters as well, keep them to the 15.5 or 12 miles. Putting a restrictor on, I mean, I think 15.5 miles for people commuting to and from, like in and around London and places like that, keeping up with the general flow of the traffic. If they're keeping them on the roads and they can't ride on pavements, that's fine. But 20 mile an hour, 25 mile an hour, I think it's acceptable. But the motor side of it, I think some people will need a bigger motor to get them up the hills, and if they're bigger people, it's going to reduce the speed anyway. What I think they should look at is basically saying, if you get caught speeding on it, they fine you. But don't be saying that you're governed to 500 watt motor. It's the speed what you're doing, not the motor. If anything, look at these e-bikes. They're going 50 mile an hour, just wearing a crappy helmet on it. Make them wear, if they're going over 30 mile an hour, they should be wearing a proper sort of helmet. The woman who's been banned for drink driving on a hen do. the woman who's been banned from driving for going through a red light on a scooter. There's no mention of saying they've been done for riding the e-scooter, just been banned from drink driving and for going through a red light. But how many cyclists go through red lights? I've got nothing whatsoever against any cyclist, any e-scooter, anybody who's being practical, being responsible for riding any e-bike, e-scooter, any electrical device. You can't say you're going to give us, you've got to have a licence, you've got to have this. You don't do it with bikes, e-bikes, they're electric bikes. You don't do it with them. Why are you doing it with e-scooters? That's if that's what people are saying that's going to happen. Just thought to go through a few comments what people's put on the previous video about the 10th of May when Shaps is going to release the legalisation or the regulations or legalities of when the e-scooter is going to become legal. So this is just a few comments of what people's put. Right, this sounds like a bit of a positive one anyway. E-scooters shouldn't be treated worse than other means of transport, so if there are no limitations for speed and power on cars, there should be no limitations on e-bikes and e-scooters. Some countries have ridiculous limitations on the power, 250 watts for e-bikes or 500 watts on e-scooters. Hip hip hooray, so that's an happy one. I'm really excited the first time about the prospect of e-scooters becoming legal. This is great news. I've been riding a Caboo Mantis 800 watt as a commuter scooter, not a computer, he's put computer, in central London for the last 2.5 years. I've clocked up over 3,000 miles, so good on him. Cracking down on the standards of poor use, well yeah, if they're riding on pavements and being idiots on them, two people doubling up, I totally agree with that. Shouldn't be happening, should be wearing an helmet with them. Saying that you must have 2 brakes on the scooters, well the Limes haven't got 2 handle brakes on them, they've got one brake at the front and one that you push down with your foot on the back. 15.5 mile an hour, somebody's saying it's ridiculous. I can agree with that to certain aspects. If like commuting around London and that, they've got to keep up with the steady flow of the traffic, so obviously they're not going to do, if they're doing 15.5 mile an hour, 15.5 miles an hour does seem fast on one of them scooters when I'm on it anyway. But obviously the bigger person, 250 watt 500 watt motor probably isn't going to pull them, so obviously that's going to reduce the speed even more for them. I think what should be basically happening is, if you get caught speeding on it, it's the equivalent to just getting a fine. But so does e-bikes as well, they should be getting the fines as well. There's mobility scooters, they're doing more than 15.5 mile an hour, and there's quite a few different people that probably disagree with me or agree with me. Yeah, they're absolutely making laws that don't even make sense, and it's the same with, you can hire one but you can't own one. E-scooters, e-bikes, e-skateboards, it's just going to become a way of life, just like buses become a way of life to get you to and from work. They didn't have e-scooters out in them times when the buses first come out, so they're out now, they're here to stay, like Shap said. So he's going to try and put some sort of policy in place, but he needs to look at people who's bigger people, they need a bigger watts motor to pull them up. The speed restrictions, I think you need to have a look at that, where people have got to keep up with traffic. Yes, if people are doubling up on them, yeah, that shouldn't be allowed. It's a one person thing for the scooter. So there's loads of things what they're going to be looking at. I don't think they're going to be legalised on the 10th. I think they're just going to say it's passed a bill that they're going to be legalised, but they've got to have the policies and everything in place first. So don't be going jumping out saying I'm going to get me one on the 10th, it's going to be passed, because he said that. If you watch that last previous video I've put up, you can see in his voice and his comments what he's saying. So please hit that subscribe button down here, give us a thumbs up, and I'll see you all soon on the next one. be positive, put some comments below being positive. Don't be putting all negative ones up saying, oh, it needs 10-inch, it's got to have 12-inch wheels. And some of the e-scooters which on our hire, some of them has only 10-inch wheels on them. They've only got one brake on. They're limited to 15.5 mile an hour. So there's loads of things what might come out and loads of things what might not come out. We'll only all find out on the 10th of May. So be positive, don't be negative.